Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A, where A stands for awesome. Today we are going to be covering section 4.5, nested loops, loops inside loops. So make sure that you have your notes ready to go. We are going to be tracing some of the code. So we're going to be using this part of the notes in a few minutes or later towards the notes. Make sure that you have your repo ready to go. 4.5 nested loops. Type in your name, your period, and don't forget to click on submit so you can get full points for this activity. We are going to be coding together. So let's get started. We covered for loops on the last section, and we've done some exercises that we cover. We do loops for strings and for integers to be able to solve some coding problems and some algorithms. So we have our Java import statement here. So we import the scanner class. So therefore, let's go and get some input from the user. We're going to get a string. So we have to create, declare our object scan of type scan. And we're going to call the constructor scanner. Okay, we're going to get input from the keyboard, so we're going to say system.in. And one of the things that I do prefer to do is to go to disable or autocomplete for now. So let's go and disable. That might be helpful. And that way we don't get all those options that we haven't covered in class. And let's type in system.out. Print enter a word. So this is something that we've done in the previous exercises, and it's going to be a string and say word equals to scan is the name of the object. So now we can use, now that we create an object, we can use any of the methods that are in that class. One of the methods is next line. And now they're going to enter a word, and let's say they're going to enter the word hello. And what we want to do, we want to be able to do a loop, so we're actually going to be printing each of the letters that they enter in a separate line. So we do a for loop. Now remember, the for loops have three components, correct? First, we are going to declare and initialize a variable int I equal to 0. Then, and do you guys notice that I did something wrong? Correct. This should be a semicolon. And the way that you need to remember is that each of those three components are basically three different statements. And at the end of each statement, we place a semicolon. So therefore, that should be a semicolon. Then we want to go all the way through until the length of the word. So I, while I is less than word.length. And that is how you want to be able to think about it, is we are going to declare it and initialize the variable, and that's one statement. Then this is the while I is less than word.length. Then the third component will be I++. We're going to increment the value of I by 1 every single time. And now we are going to print each of the letters, system.out.println. And how can we print each of the letters? We're going to do word.substring from I till I+1. And that will print each of the letters throughout the word. So let's go and run it. And while it's running, I'm going to adjust my window so I can see the entire. So now I'm going to run it and I'm going to say hello. So now we actually print each of the letters once. What if I want to be able to print each of the letters twice within the same line? So what can I change in order to be able to print each of the letters twice? So correct, I can go ahead and print this and copy and paste it. And now each of the letters gets printed twice. If I type in the word hello, but it gets printed 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But what if I want it in the same line? So I can go ahead and take this off, and now I can print each of the letters twice in the same line. Perfect. What if I want each of the letters to be printed 3 times? Then we can go ahead and copy this statement, correct? And just place it here. And now we can print each of the letters 3 times. What if I want to print each of the letters 10 times? Then that code will be repeated over and over again. So there should be another way where we can have the repetition. So therefore, what we're going to do instead, I'm going to go and keep one of them. And what we're going to do, we're going to do a loop inside a loop. And that is called nested loops. So for, now I need to be able to declare a different variable. We already have I, so now I'm going to use j equal to 0, semicolon, because that's its own independent statement, while j is less than, how many times do we want to print it? Let's say 3 times. Remember that we start at 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, so that's 3, and that's what we don't want it to be equal to. While j is less than 3, j plus plus. Now I'm going to open and I'm going to close my brace, and now our statement looks something like this. So therefore, it's going to go through each of the words, for each of the letters, and let me place my index here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So therefore, the first time is going to be 0. It's going to go through here. Now, inside this loop, it's going to get stuck once, twice, 3 times. While I equal to 0 is going to print once. I equal to 1 is going to go through. I equal to 2, that's true, it's going to go through. I is equal to 3, that's false, so therefore it exits. Then it's going to go through the next letter, which will be E. Then I will be equal to 1. And then this is going to go through 1, twice, 3 times. Then once it finishes, it's going to go through and increase the I value by 1. So now I will be 2. And then it's going to go 3 times. Then it's going to increase the value of I again. And that should give us the same result as before. But there's a problem. Can you guys see what is the problem? Correct. We're going to print them in the same line. So how can we have it so it prints in a different line each time? Right. So therefore, once it goes through this loop, we want to be able to have a print statement that will just give us the next line. So it'll be, and let me go and place a tab in here. This should be tab because that's part of this for loop. And now it's going to be system .out.print and nothing in there. And therefore, that should be what we're looking for. So therefore, now if we want to be able to print each of the letters 5 times, we just need to make a quick change. And if we want to print each of the letters 10 times, if we want to print each of the letters 20 times, then that's just one number that we need to change. And we can actually even ask the user, how many times do you want each letter to be printed? And then we can just place that as a user input. Excellent. So that's one use of a nested for loops. As we go into arrays and double arrays, then we are going to be forced to use for loops to be able to go through a double array. Now, let's say that we actually want to, let's go and get rid of all of that. And let's say that we actually want to be able to use a double for loop to be able to print the multiplication table. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, and so on. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a nested for loop. So before int I equal to 0, I, well, I is less than, let's do just 1 through 10. 11, right, because we want it up to 10. Now and then I plus plus. We don't always have to start with 0. In this case, we want to do 1 times 1, 2 times 1 times 2. We don't want 0 times 1. So we're going to start from 1 all the way up to 10. So we can do less than 11, or if you want, you can do equal to 10, whichever you prefer. Most of the time, we just leave it up to less than 11. Now, inside, we are going to have another statement that will be for int, and we need another variable will be j equal to 1, while j is less than 11, so I'll go up to 10, j plus plus. And now we're going to print the multiplication. So system.out.print ln, and we're going to do I times j. And let's see and what happens. Let's go and run it. So it gives it to us in different lines. So what we want to do, we want to be able to print them in the same line, and we want to be able to have a tab afterwards. So what we're going to do, we're going to enclose this in parentheses, just to go to easier to read. And now we're going to place a escape character of a tab. And we want it in different lines, so we're going to do system.out.print ln. And we're just going to have an empty print statement. And now we can run it, and that should give us the output that we're looking for. And now we can say 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, 15, and we print out the multiplication tables. And if we want, we can actually place, take the time to be able to place a header and a column. So let's go and do that. Let's go and place a header on top. So therefore, I'm going to place the numbers 1 through 10 and then an extra line underneath. So therefore, let's go and do 4 and int I equal to 1. I is less than 11. I plus plus. And I'm just going to say system.out.print ln I. Now, notice that I'm using I in this block of code, and then I'm using the I once again. So because I'm going to declare the I here, this I only exists within this block of code. And let me just go and say print, and I just want to be able to print a tab afterwards, correct? So I can have it the same. So plus tab. And open my quotation marks. And let me go, and I want a line afterwards be printed. So if I want 2 lines afterwards. So therefore, now I'm looking for the numbers on the left, 1 times 1. So what we're going to do in here, how can I print the numbers on the left and tab this over? So in here, on each, before each of the lines, I want to be able to print system.out.print ln. And do I want it to be ln? No, I just want it to be in. And I'm just going to print I, and then I want to tab everything over once. And let's go and run it. And I believe I'm going to need a tab up there. So yeah, so I just need to place a tab at the very beginning before we start the without the element. So therefore I start with a tab. And now I have my multiplication tables that I can use. Over to my tab, my escape character. Here we go. And now we go and print the multiplication tables that we have. So now we have 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 3 is 12. Now, any questions so far? So nested loops have quite a few uses. One of the things that we have to be aware is that we don't always have to start, will be I. Sometimes they'll be, this will be placed as the value of I. So let me go and get rid of a few statements. I'm going to get rid of this statement here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all my previous statements. So instead of starting at I, at 1, I'm going to start at the value of I. So let's see what happens. And let me just go and print the value of, and I'm just going to print the value of I or of J. Let me just print the value of J instead of. So there's going to be times that we actually we want to be able to start with I, so we start with 1 all the way up to 10, then from 2 all the way up to 10, and then from 3, 4, 5, 6. So don't always think that this always has to be 0 or 1. There's going to be times that we are going to have to actually use the value of I. So what's going to happen is the first time is going to go from 1, it's going to start 1. Then from here it's going to go from J is equal to 1 all the way up to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which is what we get here. Then the next time, the I value gets increased by 1, so therefore the I value is 2. Therefore, J is going to be initialized to 2, and it's going to print all the values of J from 2 all the way up to 10. Then the I value gets increased by 1. So therefore, the I value is 3, and therefore J gets initialized to 3, and goes from 3 all the way to 10, and so on, up to whenever I is 10, the J value gets initialized to 10, goes through, gets increased by 1, that's false, so he exits. Then I gets increased by 1, so now it's 11, so that is false, so therefore he ends. And only one number gets printed, which is 10 at the very end. Questions? So next, let's go through and trace the code that's in your notes. So you should have your notes with you. So one of the things that you'll have to do for the IP exam is to be able to trace code. You're going to have to determine what is going to be the output of this code. And one of the best things to do is to be able to make a table where we are going to go line by line, and determine what is going to be the output. So I typed in the code here so I can refer back to it as I go through the tracing of the code. So first, let's look at the code that is given to us. String str, declare a initialize to loop for I equal to 0, while I is less than the length of the string. So the length is 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to go ahead and write down the word here. So we have LOOP. So the length is 4. And I'll write that index underneath. So you want to do this on your AP exam. Just go and write down the index. It's going to save you time, and it's going to allow you to make sure that you are able to come back to your string as you are tracing your code. And we have first, then we have another loop inside, so we have a nested loop where they use j equal to 0 while j is less than 3, so 0, 1, 2 is going to go through each 3 times, and notice it's going to print the substring one letter at a time from I to I plus 1, so therefore it's going to use the outer loop, the index of the outer loop, to be able to print the letter. So which means that the letter will be printed 3 times every single time. So let's go through and say, okay, we're going to start in I equal to 0, so we're going to place I equal to 0. Then we're going to go through this loop and say j equal to 0. And in this loop, we're going to go through until j is less than 3. So therefore, we're going to print out the substring from I to I plus 1. So therefore, it will be, and let me make myself a little smaller. So therefore, I'm going to go from 0 to 1, but I'm not going to print the 1, so therefore I'll be just saying L. Next, I went through print. The value of j gets increased by 1, so therefore the value of j is now 1. It's going to go through, and is 1 less than 3? Yes, so therefore it prints the I from I plus 1. The value of I is still 0, so therefore we're still going to print only the L. Then the value of j gets increased by 1 again, so now it's 2. And then we're going to print exactly the same thing because the value of I has not changed. So it'll be from 0 to 0 plus 1, it'll be just 0 to 1, so it'll be just the L. Then the j gets increased by 1, which is 3. Is 3 less than 3? No, so therefore we actually don't go into the loop again. So now we're going to come back to the outer loop, and the value of I gets increased by 1, so therefore the value of I is now 1. Is 1 less than the length of the string? Yes, because the length is 4. So therefore, we go, and the value of j gets initialized and declared back to 0. And we're going to print from I to I plus 1. The value of I is now 1, so from 1 to 1 plus 1 is 2. So therefore, from 1 to 2, but we don't include the 2, so it gets printed 0. Not 0, but O. Now, we're going to go through, and the value of j gets increased by 1, so now it's going to be 1. We're going to print the same things, which is a O. Now the value of j gets increased by 1, so now it'll be a 2. 2 is less than 3, yes. So now we're going to print the same variable again, so it'll be an O. Then the value of j gets increased by 1, which will be 3. Is 3 less than 3? No. So I'm not even going to write down since we're not going through the loop. So now we go over here, the value of I gets increased by 1, so now that'll be 2. Then we go through the loop. The j value gets back to 0. And now we're going to go from I to I plus 1. The value of I is now 2. So from 2 to 3. So 2 to 3, we don't include the 3, so therefore that'll be just another O. And now we go through and increase the value of j by 1, so now be 1. Print the same letter, another O. Then the value of j gets increased by 1, so it'll be 2. We print the same letter, so it'll be another O. The value of j gets increased by 1, which will be 3. Therefore, that makes it false. So we end this loop, and we come back and increase the value of I by 1. So now the value of I is 3. Is 3 less than the length of the word? Yes, because the length of the word is 4. So therefore, we go through one more time. J value gets back to 0. We print from 3 to 3 plus 1 is 4. So from 3 to 4, remember that if it gives you the arrow bounds for this one, it will not give you an arrow bounds. It will give you an arrow bounds if it was I plus 2. But in this case, it's fine, so therefore it will print the letter P. Increase the value of j by 1. Print the letter P. Increase the value of j by 1. You print the letter P. Increase the value of j by 1. But that makes it false, so therefore it doesn't go into this loop. Comes over here. The value of I gets increased by 1, which will be 4. 4 is less than 4, false, so therefore you exit. So therefore it prints this here, but notice that there's no ln. So therefore the output will be L, 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 O, 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 P, 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 P. And if I run it, that should give me the correct output. Perfect. So now let's look at the next set of code. This is a typical AP exam question where they're going to give you a piece of code and you need to trace it to be able to see what the output is. So we have, and it's the for loop. We have our first for loop. It's going to be declaring the value of j, the variable j, initialize it to 4. While j is greater than 0, we're going to decrease it this time. Then the value of k gets initialized to the value of j, while k is less than 5. And we're going to increase the value of k by 1. And then we're going to print the value of k every time. Then we print a new line. And then we go through all over again. So the best thing to do is to be able to make a quick table so we can see what's happening. So let's go and make a quick table. Let's go make a column for j, a column for k, and then I'm going to place my output on the right hand side so that I can keep track on when do I need to make a new line. So I usually keep my output over separately. Now you can do it on the same table if you want, but most of the time I prefer it to be on the side. So we have the value of j, the value of k. So we start. The value of j gets initialized to 4, while j is greater than 0, so we go through the loop. Be careful, there's going to be times that whenever it gets declared, it might get declared to 0 or initialized to 0, and then it doesn't even go through the loop. So we do need to be able to be careful with this statement here. So it does go through the loop. So therefore, the value of k gets initialized to j. So therefore, that is 4. While k is less than 5, it is less than 5, so we go through the loop. We're going to print the value of k, which is 4. Then we increase the value of k by 1, which is 5. And notice that I will be placing the 5 in here, even though it makes the statement false. Then that kind of makes me realize that I completed this for loop. Therefore, I finish and then I press a new line. So now it's going to be a new line. I go through and I'm going to subtract 1 from my value of j, which is now 3. Is 3 greater than 0? Correct. So therefore, I'm going to initialize my value of k to the value of j, which is 3. So therefore, is 3 less than 5? Yes, I continue. So I print the value of k, which is 3. Then I increase my value of k by 1. So now it's going to be 4. Is 4 less than 5? It is. So therefore, I print the value of k, which is 4 on the same line since there's no ln. Then I increase the value of k by 1. So therefore, that'll be 5. 5 is less than 5? No. So therefore, I end my loop. I print a new line. And I subtract 1. So I go ahead and make it 2. My value of k gets initialized to j, which is now 2. It gets k is less than 5, yes. So therefore, I print the value of k, which is 2. Increase it by 1. So therefore, print it out gives me 3. Increase it by 1 is less than 5, yes. Print it out. Increase it by 1 gives me 5. That is false, so therefore I end that loop. Now my value of j gets to be 1. Is 1 greater than 0? Yes. So therefore you already know that this is going to be the last time that we go through the loop. So now the value of k gets initialized to j, so now it's going to be 1. We're going to be, is it less than 5? Yes, we're going to print it out on the new line. Then we're going to increase the value of k, so it'll be 2. We print it out. 3. We print it out. 4. We print it out. 5. We end. We make a new line. Then we decrease the value of j to 0, and I'm continue here. So value of j equals 0. Therefore, is j greater than 0? False. So therefore, we end, and that is our output. So you want to make sure that you take the time to make a table. That's going to be very helpful. I usually do make the time to make this variable here, so I know and I can compare it, and I know that's false, so therefore my loop is ended, and it helps me process what my output should be. So this is the lesson for today. Please email me if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.